guys enjoying yourselves so far?
Yeah.
I write a lot about like cognitive load and exhaustion and stuff, and so while the research indicates that you guys are probably getting pretty crabby and bored by now, so we hope to provide some comic relief for all that. So I'm Drake. That is my real name. I am not a Canadian rapper. I am an American journalist. I have the privilege of being an employed writer for the internet. I work just up the street at Business Insider, and I am joined by probably three of the most beautiful people you're ever going to see. At the far end of the stage is Nihal Mehta, who is an investor and a father and a husband, formerly a serial entrepreneur, working mainly in ad tech and mobile. Just next to Nihal is Acharya Eric Spiegel, who presently is the CFO for Kenzin, which is a fast-growing financial services company. No?
Software development.
Software and development. He had a 20-year, however, he had a multiple-decade career in finance previous to that, which is where I get the finance thing from. And he's a teacher, a senior teacher, and acharya in the Shambhala tradition, and teaches often at the Shambhala Center right on 22nd Street over in Chelsea. And then nearest to me is Chloe Jung, yes, who spent 12 years working in organizational development for Deutsche Bank and KPMG, and she now has an independent consultancy called Chloe & Co., and her new website is live as of next week, I think. Is that right?
Yesterday.
Yeah, yesterday, today. Wow, amazing. And so the koan. Anybody? Okay. The riddle that a lot of people in this room wake up to every day is, I live in New York and I am trying to stay sane and maybe even like do some good in the world, etc. Because this is where, if you make it here, you can make it anywhere. Very big stage. Things scale quickly. So we are going to just talk about what it is to be in New York and to be embodied in New York. Full disclosure, I used to be a philosophy major, so it's very important that I define my terms. Yeah, I overshare. I'm a millennial. There's going to be a lot of oversharing from me. So first, I was born on December 10th. So first, I think we should define what mindfulness means to each of us and how we embody it. Given that Eric is the Buddhist teacher on the panel, I think I'll kick it to him first.
Thank you. Thank you, Drake. I think that in modern society, which is obviously New York completely embodies, but really it's also everywhere you go, it's not really an east-west issue anymore, it's a modern situation, that our minds have run way ahead with us and left our hearts behind. So I think that for me, mindfulness is about rebalancing between head and heart, and which doesn't mean exercising mind or a concept or a theory, but just finding a way to actually feel what you feel and know what it is that you feel and carry that into the world. So whatever else is going on, we feel different currents all the time, and that it's really important to notice what they are and then act on that, bring that forward.
That's great.
Yeah, I think, it's crazy here, right, in the concrete jungle. And I think a lot of folks definitely get caught up in the hustle. I used to live in San Francisco before New York, and I remember when I moved to New York, I had to figure out how to find nature. Like, nature was my way to kind of release. I was like literally searching blocks and blocks and blocks for like a patch of grass, and like I couldn't find anything. And then I realized that, you know, mindfulness is more, I think, at least for me, more of presence and awareness, right? And being present, I think, is something that a lot of folks now, especially the millennials, when they're doing their Instagram or their Snapchat, or you know, they forget, right? And I think that's really important to just find that presence. And you don't have to find it through a patch of grass. You can, you know, find it, unfortunately, on a concrete slab, but you have to look for it. You have to literally be present. And I think that's a big part of mindfulness, at least what I've learned in coping with living in New York.
So I really like the question about living mindfully. So there's the living and mindfully. And when I think about living, and I'm a very metaphorical and image person, I think of a stream, a really, really forceful and like energetic stream. So that's my life force. And mindfully just means that the river, the stream just kind of flow through. When there's rock, you just flow through it. It's movement versus a static of, oh, I'm just going to be still and be peaceful. So, yeah.
That's great. Such vivid images. Thanks, guys. As I think, as Nihal, I think especially touched on, there's something about this environment, and I would contend that the environment of New York exists in several levels. There's this physical environment, which may or may not have any plants in it, often not. But there's also a symbolic environment that we live in, and I think a lot of it relates to status and ambition and how good you look, how much money you make. Oh, what do you do? Oh, where do you live? Oh, that's nice, huh? Is that on the L train? So, that's an inside joke. So I'd like to learn more about, like, how do you use mindfulness in order to navigate this place when you're like trying to crowd in onto the 6 train at 8 in the morning? How do you physically navigate this place in a mindful way?
Yeah, I think you look at it like a video game, you know? It's a game. I think that's what it is, right? And I don't know, I just start cracking up sometimes when the game gets so funny, right? You jump into like that super crowded subway, it feels like a cartoon. And to almost like, you know, take yourself out of that position and like look at it as if like you're watching it on TV. I think that's how you cope with it.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's really funny. Eric?
I don't play video games, but I do ride the subway and walk the streets of the city. So I think a lot of times when people talk about mindfulness or they talk about meditation, the first thing that they learn is about breathing. And breathing serves a lot of purposes. It's also a big part of yoga. Particularly in meditation teaching, it brings you into the present moment, that the breath doesn't have any particular significance except that it's right now, and then it's right now. So it's a way to come into the present, and then in the present, you can make decisions about how you want to be. So if you're on the subway or if you're walking down the street and there's a lot of different energies and people around you, and you sort of maybe are just hidden in your thoughts or your emotions, then you can come into the present either through breath or looking out, taking a moment and actually getting outside your head and noticing where you are.
I'm curious, I think this is and I think it probably also relates to this status thing that I'm obsessed with. But when you say when you may be hidden in your thoughts or emotions, what do you mean by that?
Well, how many times do you walk down the street that you don't notice the street that you're walking down because you're arguing with someone who isn't physically there, or making love with someone who isn't physically there, or doing all sorts of things. So, or worrying about your rent. I mean, it could be anything. So I feel like that's continual. That's sort of the continual movement of mind, and I don't think that that's a problem. But it's a problem that we don't know that it's true. So the point is to actually notice that we're in our mind and that there's actually a here, and then use breath or whatever grounding mechanism you can to then come into the present, and then just to come back to what I said earlier, then to like connect with your heart, or just to literally like, rather than just like be a walking head, walking embodied concept, to actually take a moment and feel yourself in that environment and look out and see it freshly. And for me, New York is an incredible place because it is so vivid. It's like nature is also really beautiful and really vivid. And I live in the country primarily now. But New York is so fabulous in terms of architecture and different kinds of people and the energies that you see. You don't see that anywhere else. I mean, or at least anywhere else that I go. So.
That's great, and maybe it's a useful discussion as well, as to not see New York as strictly like this obstacle, and the energies of New York as obstacles, but also something that can be nourishing to us. Do you want to tell us about that? Is it because you moved from the financial district to Brooklyn that?
Yeah, it's interesting. I was thinking about that when you're asking about the physical environment, because I feel like sometimes I win, sometimes I lose. Sometimes I walk out the door thinking, okay, I'm gonna use my environment and I'll, play a soundtrack and appreciate the richness that you were saying about New York. And sometimes it's just too much. So I lived at the financial district for 5 years, and recently moved to Brooklyn, and it's just such a transformation. I felt like I moved to a different country. I think it's still too many buildings. I would love to actually just live on Rockaway and just look at the ocean every day. But yeah.
That's great. I don't know what I really think about all of that. I think that just enjoying all, like how much all of everything about this place is like turned up to 10 or 11. With the intensity, like you could see like the most tragic sight of like sickness or homelessness, like extreme suffering, right beside like the most beautiful person, the wealthiest person, like the most worldly successful person on the same exact block. And like there's something about allowing myself to receive that's super powerful. Something we were talking about earlier was this idea of identity. Again, as a millennial, I'm forced to talk about social media. I'm pretty sure everyone in here, since this is also a business conference, has a LinkedIn profile. And it's a great question, like, am I my LinkedIn profile? How much does that relate to who I am, like, as a person? Eric, I think that you were telling us earlier about an interaction you had with a teacher of yours about whether or not you should be in finance. Could you walk us through that?
I grew up in New York and then I moved away. I grew up on the Lower East Side and then I moved away and almost immediately met my teacher when I was 19 and also came out about the same time. Then when I moved back here about 8 or 10 years later, immediately this Wall Street career picked up and kind of just grabbed me and brought me along with it. And it was really hard. It was actually initially a really harsh environment. And I asked one of my teachers, a guy named the Vajra Regent, who was a Western Buddhist teacher, if I should even be doing that. And he was so clear immediately. He said that there's so much power and there's so much money in the world, and so much of it is just really used for destruction or for, he used different words, but basically for suppression and aggrandizement. And he said, anything that you gain through this is going to be put to better use. So that was a really important shift for me because it meant that I wasn't just working, I actually had like an idea of sort of a vision of what I was doing, which I think is really lacking in a lot of society today, that people don't actually know why they're doing what they're doing. So for me, it really is a matter of that I'm trying, by working in the world of wealth and the world of money and energy, trying to both bring wisdom and some kind of appreciation into that world, but also bring knowledge into the spiritual world, worldly knowledge, which I think is really lacking from the spiritual world, for the most part, except maybe the Vatican. So.
That's great. I'm especially curious of your perspective, Nihal. For those of you who don't know this glorious human at the far end of the stage, multiple-time entrepreneur, has built and sold companies, responsible for a lot of people. How do you think mindfulness, and I think a part of that is a sense of purpose, a sense of vision, how has that interacted with your kind of voyage as a leader of teams and of organizations, and now as a mentor to other entrepreneurs?
Yeah, I think, as an entrepreneur and an optimist, I believe that everybody has their purpose in life, that there's a niche in this universe that everybody is destined to find, and sometimes it takes folks their entire lives, maybe without finding it. Some people find it very early, but that niche is driven by passion, and that can be kind of anything that you love to do. I was lucky to find my passion very early, and that was in just being a computer geek and loving kind of mobile software, and I got into mobile tech very early. But I think that passion then, when you find that fit, that niche, then your passion kind of ends up embodying kind of that leadership, that you end up becoming kind of this sun or having this gravity where other folks are kind of attracted to that passion or aligned like other planets, with that passion, right? And so leadership to me is basically first finding your passion and being great at it. And whether it's a Malcolm Gladwell kind of 10,000 hours of experience, or pick your favorite Steve Jobs quote, right? Like you'll know when you feel it. It's a matter of the heart, right? And then just keep on working at it, and then you'll naturally become an expert in that field, and you'll naturally become a leader in that field. And then I think then leadership is natural. It's not anything you really work for. It's just your passion, and everything you do is exuding that passion, and I think people follow you for that, right? Mm-hmm. And I think the best leaders kind of in this world, whether it's the Dalai Lama or Barack Obama or the next president of the United States, Hillary Clinton, or you know, and that's what they do. They lead with passion.
That's great. I'll work on that. Thank you. There's a few threads there that I'd like to return to, but first I'd like to get to a very important question and have everyone have a space to talk about it. There's a great, one of the best people who writes about work, and New York is such a work-oriented place, is David White, who wrote an incredible book, Crossing the Unknown Sea. He wrote another amazing book called The Three Marriages. And in The Three Marriages, he says, well, there's three marriages. You have the relationship with another, with a partner. You have your relationship with your work, with your calling. And then you have your relationship with yourself. And what he says is that those first two, the work relationship, which is kind of a relationship you have with an interaction you have with the world, your primary relationship, a romantic, familial. The one that's easy to get crowded out is the relationship you have with yourself. And if you lose track of that, then the other two don't really have like a foundation to rest on. So I'm very curious to know from you guys, like, how do you, given your many responsibilities, the many hats you wear, the different identities you embody, how do you actually pragmatically create the time to nourish and cultivate yourself?
Well, I remember a conversation we had a while back about the importance of building the interior richness. And I think that was a time that I was starting to begin this conversation about who am I and what is my relationship with myself. And being someone who grew up in a pretty rigorous academic environment in Hong Kong, it's all about achievement. It's all about getting the right job. It's all about climbing up the corporate ladders. And I did that for 12 years out of duty and fear and many other things. And so, and I really love what David White said about the three marriages, because they're all so important. And he talked about how we are actually selling ourselves short by thinking, oh, I can just balance self, work, and marriages. But I think that it is our responsibility to actually spend time and effort to cultivate a relationship with ourselves, however, elusive or difficult it is, because I think from there's where you can actually flourish in your relationship, your work, and yourself, because they're really one thing, and they're not three things. It's like the Trinity.
Mm. Eric?
Well, and based on that, I think also part of how you cultivate a relationship with yourself is really knowing that it's really important to individually contemplate what our personal values are and what are, I think of inner priorities, not just like what you want to accomplish in an outer way in this life, but what you actually care about. And I feel like societally that's missing, that sense of real value of so that we have a lot of things we say we care about, but that in when push comes to shove, it all goes out the window and we really care about ourselves. And that shows a lot in our culture. And so I feel like it's really important that individually I have tried to really know what my higher priorities or inner, I think of them more as inner rather than necessarily higher values are. And so that then when you're making decisions, you actually, so often when we make decisions, someone says, would you like to go for a ride with me? And, you know, you just think, oh, okay, you know, and it doesn't sort of fit in any particular plan, and then all of a sudden you're on their trip. And so, so I think that really having taken time, and not just once, but continually, to know where we want to be going in our life, where we want to end up, what kind of person we want to be. Then as we make the millions of decisions that we make during the course of a day, week, and month, we're actually making them in a context.
My wife and I have an agreement. We recently had a son. He's seven months old. He has a Twitter account, by the way, @BabySean, SHAAN. He'd love you to follow him. We need an hour of me time a day. So I love running. That's like my chance to just like get out on the west side and just run and just play, you know, have some Spotify and listen to good music and just literally kind of mind, body, soul, specifically at sunset. That's like the trifecta, right? If you get a nice run at sunset, then like all three, you come back kind of recharged. You know, I think she probably uses that time to exercise too, but I think that's really important to do every single day. I know that keeps us grounded. You know, I think a lot of people obviously take it out through exercise or meditation or yoga or whatever it might be, but I think that me time is incredibly important, you know, building on what you guys said.
That's fantastic.
That's kind of more what you asked than what we answered.
But the thing is that they're so intimately related, right? Like there's this rhythm between the deep self-knowledge, right? And then the practical application of it. You know, it's like the relationship between physics and engineering. Like you have to know your own principles in order to apply them. Yeah. I think we're done here.
Great.
We figured it out, guys.
We could do some yoga poses.
Are you gonna?
Yeah.
You need to drop a mic or something.
Yeah.
I think. Drop the pen.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.